day in the freezing, freezing cold, I decided my car was so filthy I'd take it to the car wash. Washing cars in last week's weather must be one of the worst jobs you could have. And the guy did a brilliant job. He had his woolly hat on, his nose was red, his hands were freezing. And at the end, I gave him his money and I said, you know, I really feel sorry for you. He said, I know, he said, but I think it's going to get warmer on the weekend. I said, yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, he said, can I just give you a bit of advice? I said, yeah. He said, try and keep off the road next Wednesday. I said, why? Is the weather going to get bad again next Wednesday? No, he said, my wife's taking a driving test. So I said, come on. I said, come on, that's not so bad. He said, for the 8th time? I said, thank you. I just thought I'd share that with you. Okay, tonight's guest. Mick has been a Christian since he was a teenager, and his history, his career history, has mainly been with sound production. He had a company, still involved with it, called Wigwam Acoustics, and he has produced the sound for many, many of the major Christian festivals throughout this country and abroad. He knew Billy Graham well. He was involved with the sound at Mission England in 1984 and in Billy Graham's crusades behind the Iron Curtain in Romania, in Hungary, in Russia. And as well as that, he knew the late David Watson, and he provided sound for his events as well. He's also provided sound for Matt Redman concerts and Stuart Townend concerts, all the people that you probably know and heard of. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, his personal life has seen many challenges. And he's come tonight to tell his story and how God has seen him through those challenging and difficult times. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Mick Spratt.
Got my clicker. Good evening, everybody. Look at this full of technology.
You got your bit sorted out?
Yeah, got my clicker, got my paper.
Good.
Had my pie. Anita made me a lovely pie tonight.
Yeah.
Right.
And you've eaten half of it?
I've eaten half of it. I'm saving the other half for later.
Okay.
Yeah, for the interval.
Mick, I've interviewed many people over the years, and there are often some complicated areas in people's lives, but not with you. I found your history quite straightforward, but I think it needs a bit of unpacking. You said your mum used to buy you magazines that were expensive at the time, and your dad didn't have two halfpennies to rub together until he knew that he was dying. Then he put things together for his family. So, to go back to the beginning, where was home? And tell me about your family, brothers or sisters or anything. So where was home?
I'm just going to get rid of this dirty chewing gum out of my mouth. I just realised it. Sorry about that. Okay. I'm from Manchester and North Manchester. So that's where our family are from. And we then moved up to Haywood, which North Manchester. And my dad was a working man. My mum was a working lady. And we had a great life, but my dad used to buy cars and do them up. So he'd buy a car for £35 and he'd spend some money on it and then he'd sell it for £25. So, you know, it was a kind of like a different kind of business, you might say. And then he had a similar business with motorcycles, and you'd come home from school, my mum would come home from work and there'd be a motorcycle in bits in the kitchen. And we had a different kind of life. It was great fun. So my dad was always in work. He was a hard worker, but he had this car hobby, and it just used to eat away at everything he earned. But we had a great time, and we moved up to Haywood in 1964, and it was a great move for us.
Have you got any brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I've got a brother. My brother Peter is just short of 20 years younger than me. There's only two of us. So I came home from work one night and my dad said to me, "You better sit down, we've got some news." And I thought, oh, somebody's died. He said, "Your mum's pregnant." I said, "Come on, get real." He said, "No, seriously." So I was 19, I'd come home from work to find out that my mum was pregnant with my only brother Peter. And so I was in the process of getting married, and so Peter and I went on holiday last year. First time in our life we've been on holiday together, and it's just because of the age difference, we just never did that.
How did you cope with a brother walking around at 2 and 3 years of age when you were in your early 20s?
Well, I was only at home about a year before I moved out, and so it was very different, but it was great. It was great for my mum. It was great for my dad. My dad died 29 years ago, so my brother was only 13. So it was great for my mum to actually have my brother around the house, and so yeah, I kind of I've got a son who's closer to my brother than my brother is to me. So they used to hang out together.
What's this about the magazines from your mum?
Well, my mum, we used to have this deal whereby you could either have spending money, or you could have a comic or a magazine and stuff. So when I was kind of young, we did comics, and then I had this idea there was a magazine called Buses Illustrated, and I was kind of like I was like a bus geek, really. People kept training, but I was like a bus geek. But the whole idea was that I had this collection, and I used to. My first business was selling second-hand bus tickets, and I used to go to the bus garages and empty them, the things where you'd put your used tickets, and then I'd sell them, and and I did really well at it, and it's a bit like selling rodents, isn't it, Mark? So I had this idea anyway. So my mother used to buy me this magazine so I could advertise and I could sell these bus tickets. And so she'd buy me this magazine. And then after the... Have I gone? Am I back?
You're on again.
Shall I move? Let me move this over here. Does that help any better if I move this?
As you can gather, Mick was involved with sound all his life.
Sorry about this.
I'm
trying to make things better.
There you go.
Is that any good?
That's fine.
Let's sit there with this. So, and then after that, I got this magazine called Beat Instrumental. I started playing the guitar. My mother bought me this magazine, and it used to be 2 and 6 in old money, 25 pence later on. So my mother used to buy me these magazines, which were quite expensive at the time, but once I sold all the bus tickets, I started wheeler dealing in guitars and amplifiers. So the Beat Instrumental was kind of the... so really, my mother bought me 2 magazines and I made a career out of it.
You talk about your childhood and your upbringing with a smile on your face.
Yeah.
Which is great. Looking back now, all those years, what did your mum and dad do for you that you're thankful for?
My dad had a great work ethic. He was a grafter. He worked hard. He drove trucks, and then he worked for the council. He was never at work. there was a saying in our house: if you don't work, you don't eat. So as soon as I was 16, I was like, well, you better get a job. So I learned a work ethic from my dad. I learned a sense of humour from my dad. My mother was, she never had a bad word to say about anybody. She might have thought some things about people, but she'd never say it. She kind of, my dad used to say she kept a trap shut, you know, and my dad used to have another saying, which was say nought to nobody, you know, and it was kind of really, you know, there was no kind of gossiping, backbiting, none of that kind of stuff. It was like what was said in the house stayed in the house. So I guess they're the main things that I learned from them.
Now, your dad bought you a guitar when you were 11. You had a band, and your friend went to free guitar lessons with the local vicar in Haywood, and you said this was life-changing.
Yeah.
In what way?
Well, I used to pay, 25 pence to go for guitar lessons, and this pal of mine were getting them free from this vicar, Mike Hook. He was a Baptist minister in Haywood. And he said, it's amazing. He said, I get free guitar lessons. His wife makes cakes. He said, and free cup of tea. He said, it's all free. And I'm going to Bury on the bus and paying. I'm thinking, this is crazy. And but essentially at the time, it was just a form of outreach. I mean, Mike had a youth club, and he had a discotheque in it called the Wigwam Disco, and which is where our company gets its name from. But it was a kind of friendship outreach. And so I soon packed in the guitar lessons and went to meet Mike Hook. And then in 1969, I went to an event round about this time, actually, called Wigwam 69. And it was a gospel outreach. There was a Liverpool band, top of the bill, called the Crossbeats. Anybody remember the Crossbeats? Yeah. So the Crossbeats were top of the bill. They were kind of like the Beatles, but without the money, you know. they were big in gospel terms. And I saw this band, the Crossbeats, and then this other band that Mike Hook was in, movement band, and it was life-changing. So I kind of I started hanging out with this band. So I was getting free guitar lessons, hanging out with this band, and that's kind of how I got into music, into rock and roll.
You told me that you grew up in the church, but it all became real for you when you were 14. It was in a coffee bar in Manchester. What happened then?
My mum, till the week before she died, was a regular worship. She had a great faith, and she worked at the local. She worshipped at the local Roman Catholic church. So I'd had a Roman Catholic upbringing. I was taught by nuns, and I went to a school called the Cardinal Langley School. We were taught by brothers, and it was great for me. You know, it was a great experience. I enjoyed school. It was good, and so that was kind of my experience of church. It was kind of more like we just did it. Whereas when I went to this, after this Wigwam 69 event, I went to this Catacombs club in Manchester with this band, movement band, Mike Hook's band. And I heard a plain preach of the good news about Jesus, which I'd never heard it that plain. And I can remember where I was stood in this venue, and I just stopped and listened. And literally, it changed my life. And then I went to join the Baptist church and kind of started getting involved, and then I got involved with the band, and then I started playing guitar in the band and building PA equipment for the band. So that, going back to the free guitar lessons was a complete life-changing experience for my friend and for me.
Not easy for a 14-year-old to understand what it was all about, and not easy with other friends. Did you feel you should keep that to yourself, or did you talk about it?
No, it was when I went to school. It was kind of great, really, because I mean, in a Roman Catholic school, I'd suddenly become this Protestant, and it was like, which I kind of liked the banter that was going on. And while I was at school, the Good News Bible came out, which was great at the time. And the headmaster got a copy, and I went to see him to ask him whether our band could play in school. And he smiled and he said, "You're not worshipping here anymore at the church in Hayward." I said, "No, I'm going to the Baptist church." He said, "Great." He said, "Do you use this Bible?" And he just bought one. And we just had this banter about the Good News Bible, and then he allowed our band to come and play in school. So it was just a great experience.
Your career, which you mentioned briefly and I mentioned at the beginning, is centred mainly around Wigwam Acoustics, which was formed in 1972.
Yeah.
Originally supporting outreach at the local Baptist church. But it grew over the years. Tell me briefly what Wigwam does and the sort of events it provided sound for.
I might have a slide here, if I can work this. How are we doing, y'all? Oh, there we go. I'm looking on that screen there. There we go. Let's go back one. Right. Okay. That's the band. Cool. Wigwam, without introduction, God welcomes all men. It was an outreach coffee bar. Without introduction, God welcomes all men. And that was a coffee bar. It was an outreach. It's now a company. We're worldwide. And I've had this discussion in many pubs and clubs and bars with various artists as to what Wigwam means. So it's been great to us over the years.
Are you on this?
That's me at the front there, yeah.
That's you at the front?
Looking young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which year was that?
That would have been about 1975.
Oh, right.
That's Mike Hook, the vicar.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's my friend. This is great, this pointy thing, isn't it? Look at it. Right, so that's Howard, who was my friend who went to the guitar lessons. That's Leonard, our drummer, passed away some years ago. He was in a church meeting and he contributed to the church meeting. He sat down and went to sleep and went to glory. That's Brian, our bass player. He's probably the best musician in the band. He still plays in 2 or 3 bands now. So that was our van. But that's Mike. Mike's 75. He still preaches on a Sunday. He still sings. And we did a gig last summer. There was a rock and roll festival called the Deeply Vale Festival. It was up in Bury. It was a 40th anniversary. And on the Sunday of the Deeply Vale Festival, we were kind of invited as the nominal gospel band because it was Sunday. So we got up and did a set, and then afterwards some of these hippies came and shared the food with us, and they shared some cake with Mike Hook, and he preached at the night. Yeah, you know what's coming here, don't you? This cake was absolutely laced with dope, and so he kind of shared the food and said thanks very much, and then he said he preached in the Baptist church Sunday evening. He said he felt like he was hovering above the platform. But we were asked back last summer. So we went back to this festival. There was 12 bands a day on, and we were given the 9 o'clock slot on Saturday night, which is the key slot. And they're all hippie bands. And Mike, we did 25 minutes, 5 songs. And Mike was amazing. Probably the best gospel presentation I've ever heard him do. And I've played guitar behind Mike Hook. He just presented some good news. So he's still doing it, and he's got just a unique way of presenting good news.
Good. Just going back to your family for a moment. When I asked you if you'd ever lost anyone really close to you and how you coped with it, you said, yes, my mum 3 years ago. We ended up being pals, and I'm still dealing with it. It obviously had a profound effect on you. Can you tell me more about what happened and in what way it had a profound effect, and 3 years on you dealing with it?
Yeah, I've lost loads of people over the years, and I don't consider myself to be soft, so I just deal with it. When my dad died, we deal with it. We organised a funeral, and we kind of got on with our lives. When my mum died, it was a big shock. and she hadn't been ill. She was ill for one day. We called an ambulance, took her to hospital, and I left her at 4 o'clock, and she was 85, and the doctor asked her 20 questions to see if her mind was active, and she got 19 right. I mean, I got 17 right, you know, it's like, so we better like, you get out, I'll get in the bed. And she said to the doctor, do I get your job now? And she kept a sense of humour, and so I left her about 4:30, 5 o'clock. She went to sleep, and I came back at 7, and she was asleep. And they phoned me at 9:30. They said, you better come quick. We don't think your mum will make the night. And she didn't. So she was ill in the morning, and she was okay, but she was completely worn out. But we were pals, me and my mum. She'd been my mum, but over the years, because she was on her own, I'd spent a lot of time on my own. We became pals. We travelled together. We've been all over the world, you know what I mean? And so it was like, not only was it losing my mother, it was like losing a pal. And I was dealing with it. I did the funeral, went and got the death certificate, and I came to strip the house out, and I couldn't do it. My brother and my son did it. So I was quite shocked how I was affected, because I've been there, done it, bought the T-shirt with kind of people coming and going, and so it was, and I'm still dealing with it now. It's like one of your best pals ain't there anymore. Yeah. So, it was a shock. Yeah.
See, some people maybe here tonight may be trying to cope with loss, recent loss, a few years ago, in some cases more than that, and still find it hard. What would you say, as a Christian, that you would say to people who are trying to cope with this today?
For me, having a faith, it's almost like you've been saving up in the bank of faith, and I had to fall back on my faith, and I trusted God, and my faith has kept me through some right rubbish over the years,
which we're going to talk about.
But dealing with the death of my mother, we had the funeral was really good. We just it was a celebration of a life, and but yeah, I think I had to fall back on my faith, but that's what my mother fell back on, her faith. When we cleaned the house out, her daily reading notes were at the side of the bed, and they're absolutely just all in order from the day before. She was absolutely up to date, and she lived by faith, and that's kind of what has kept me going.
In the second part, I want to talk to you about your memories of Billy Graham, David Watson, and the ups and downs that you've experienced with your own family. But just before we have another song from Andy and Les, who are making their way back now, you've experienced a lot of ups and downs, and some things are easy and some things are hard. But when I asked you about any staggering fact that 100 to 200 people here might be utterly blown away by, you replied, yep, I used to have a great head of hair.
I did, let me look at... There you go. See, that's me there, look at this. That's me there, look at that. I'm pretty cool, aren't I?
What happened?
I don't know. Now, see, that's me. Look at that, Fred. That was just serious hair. And it all went down my back. Then it all went down the grid. It just dropped off. That was it. Such is life, eh?
Yeah. Okay. We're going to talk about some really serious stuff in the second half, and memories of particularly Billy Graham, with him dying week before this, and your memories of that. But in the meantime, we're going to hear from Les and Andy, who are going to play another song.
Thanks, David. We had a little chat with Mike before we started the service, and for me it was great because at last I was able to make contact up here in Merseyside with a real Mancunian. And some of you will know that I'm from Manchester, and we worked out that we probably actually grew up about 2 miles from each other or something like that. And when I heard him speak, I thought I'll be able to pinpoint that accent within 2 streets. But it was really, really great meeting beforehand, Mike. The song I'm going to sing, actually, is it's a song that I came across in Canada with a band called the Boomers. And you've got a couple of baby boomers to sing it for you. But basically, it's really about overcoming problems and getting on with your life. And I think you're going to hear later, Mike's already referred to, he's got a lot of rubbish he's going to talk about later. And I think there's a great resilience about Manx, and I think Mike will demonstrate that when he talks to David. And the song is, as I say, is called Life Goes On, and it's got that kind of message in it. Yourself, and you got the world in your hands. Life goes on. When you want something bad, while you're making plans, life goes on. What you thought was more ended up less, even though you thought you could not miss. Only know the one sure thing is this: life goes on. There are those you have wronged and those you can never forgive. Life goes on. In spite of yourselves, some will love you as long as you live. Life goes on. Even though we've taken different paths, always looking for some greener grass. So much sand has fallen through this glass. Life goes on. Where you stood, where you fell. Life goes on. In spite of yourself. Life goes on. Somehow all is well. Life goes on. Over the years, there's so much that I could confess. Life goes on. I have seen more, and I've seen much less. Life goes on. I can't recall exactly what we had. Remember mostly good things, not the bad. But there is still some sweetness in the sad. Life goes on. Where you stood, where you fell. Life goes on. In spite of yourself. Life goes on. Somehow all is well. Life goes on. Thank you.
Nice.
Thanks again to Andy and Les, who always seem to be able to pick up on the person I'm interviewing and able to find the right choice of songs. So thanks, guys. Mick, we met for the first time about 4 months ago.
Oh.
And you mentioned to me the shock ending of your first marriage and the motorbike accident shortly afterwards. What happened over your marriage? Because I think you had 3 children as well at the time. And what happened with the motorbike accident? What happened with the marriage?
It's like being on Piers Morgan, this. I'd been married to my kid's mum for the best part of 20 years. We'd been good pals. And but I was busy building a business, involved in the church, and I mean, we just drifted, and you know, my kid's mum, she couldn't deal with it anymore, and we parted, and so I'm kind of dealing with that, which was quite a shock. You know, it's a bit like getting run over by a bus, and you realise when you're underneath it reading the chassis number, you know, you're kind of in the middle of the road, and this has happened, and I kind of thought it would all come right, and you know, and it didn't. To this day, I mean, we're getting good now. We're good friends, but at the time it was a disaster. I was on my own. We had 3 children, and I had a motorcycle accident.
Who was looking after 3 children?
At the time, me.
You.
So I was running a business. I had
And,
3.
and how I'm sorry to interrupt you. How old roughly were they then?
Andrew was 6. Laura was 11. Danny was 16.
Okay.
So they were kind of, you know, all at school, and so I had that going on, and I had this motorcycle accident where my knee disappeared. I came off this bike, and the bike hit a lamppost, and the lamppost rebounded and landed on my knee. The bike came off the lamppost and landed on my knee, and my knee just disappeared. So there was nothing left. It was like dust. And they joined that bone and this bone together with a couple of bars and give me a pair of crutches and said, "Well, figure out what we're going to do." So in the meantime, I had 3 kids at home and a business to run. And this leg was 4 inches short. I mean, don't know if you can see, but this knee is a blooming giant knee. You know, this is like a knee from a bloke who might be 7 foot tall. And, you know, this is a little knee for, you know, the man who's 5'7". So they put this massive big knee in, 1 to give me a knee and 2 to make the 4 inches up in my leg. So I had a lot of surgery, nearly lost my leg, didn't know what they were going to do for 11 months. And my mother moved in with us because I couldn't even carry a cup of tea because I was on crutches. So it was interesting times, to say the least.
You then married again, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. So during the course of all this, I met a girl at the church, and she had 3 girls. Joanne, she came and helped, brought food in, etc., etc. We got on really well, and in the year 2000 we were married. In October 2000 we got married. By Christmas it had just all gone pear-shaped, and you know, I was kind of back on my own again with 3 kids. So it was kind of quite a shock, really, and you know, to this day, I mean, it just didn't work. We hadn't lived together; it just didn't work, and so I've kind of I've been there 3 times.
Yes, because you're now married to Claire.
Yeah, the incumbent Mrs. Spratt, so they say.
And you've been together for 10 years.
Yeah.
And you said she didn't just take me on, she took on all that comes with the package.
Yeah.
Tell me about Claire.
Yeah, I mean, Claire's great. She works in the industry. She was a stage manager. She's currently a playwright. And we met at an event Cannon and Ball were putting on. Claire was stage manager and I was doing sound. And it was an event with about 10 artists on, no rehearsals, and we just kind of had to wing it. So I was doing the house mix and Claire was on stage, and we were communicating on 2 mobile phones. And so we just got on really well. And, you know, I've got, I was trying to think of another word for this, but I've just got tons of baggage. I mean, I hate using that word because, I mean, there's people involved. But baggage I just have. I've got tons of baggage. And, you know, Claire's was happy to deal with it.
You said to me before we were sitting here, I wonder if you could share that, something about the attitude towards divorce changing. What was it you were saying to me? Can you remember?
I think one of the problems I faced with being divorced was actually life in church. And people couldn't deal with how I was. Nobody was laying any guilt trip on me. There was but nobody said anything. So it was just, so I'm kind of in this church. I've been in since I was 14, and nobody knew what to say to me about it. And in certain church circles, it's easier being a murderer who's been in prison and got out than being divorced. And unfortunately, in some church circles, not my local church, but in some church circles, it was really weird. And I'm working in Christian work as well, so, I'm in the midst of it all, and yet, I'm working with some people who just couldn't deal with it, so said nothing. And then I'm working with other people who was just, didn't deal well at all with. I was quite open with the situation, and it is what it is. You deal with it. Life goes on, as the song says.
Yeah.
It was hard work dealing with the position I was in. I don't believe in divorce, and I've been divorced twice, so it's not a good place to be.
How have your children coped with your marriage situations over the years? Presumably, they've been resilient and
Amazing.
Really,
Absolutely amazing. Yeah. My children are phenomenal, and they're great with me. They're great with the mother, and I put that down to the grace of God. Because at the time I said to a friend of mine, "How long does it take to find out how your children are affected by divorce?" And he said, 3 months to 30 years. You don't know. But my children have been amazing. They're amazing to me. They're amazing to the mother. And I just thank God, out of all the mess that I've dragged them through, they're all right people. They're stable.
How old are your children now, and what are they up to?
My eldest son is 39. He's currently a stage manager for Def Leppard. So he's working with Def Leppard. He's in Nashville at the moment. So he kind of works in the industry, but doesn't work for me. They've all had a spate of working for me, but haven't ended up working for me in the end. In fact, 2 Christmases ago, my eldest son said to my youngest son, "Why don't you work for me, Dad?" And he said, "Danny, do you think I want to argue with my dad about how much I get paid?" And Danny went, "Yeah, okay, fair enough." So they've worked for me. My daughter worked for me. They've all worked for me, but they've all gone off and they've done their own thing. My daughter's Laura. She works in wardrobe. She's currently looking after Pink on an American tour, so she's in the States as well. And my youngest son, Andrew, they say he's got a proper job. He works in marketing and he works for a gymnasium company. So, but Andrew's,
is that locally to you?
Yeah, well, in Wigan. He lives in Bury. Mm-hmm. But my youngest son plays sport. He's a big, he plays football. He played football in the States for 4 years, and he likes the training. And he needs a 9-to-5 job to still train. He wants to be involved in his local church, and he wants to be involved with his wife and his baby. So he's picked a career that he could have another life with, have a proper life, as he says. So, but yeah, they're okay. That's currently kind of what they're doing.
Billy Graham,
Yeah.
the evangelist, died just a couple of weeks ago, aged 99. And you were involved with him and his organisation, particularly around 1984 with Mission England at Anfield, and subsequently with his missions to Moscow, Hungary, Romania. He was an incredible man. Tell us a little bit about your memories of Billy Graham.
Amazing man, amazing, very, very normal. When he preached, we would be stood at the back of a stadium and he'd read from the Bible, he'd explain it, and then he'd leave it. And then he'd say something like, if you want to know the Lord Jesus Christ, now you step forward. And some days we'd be looking at him thinking, nothing's going to happen. It was so laid back. It was nearly horizontal. And then you'd hear a chair flip, and another one flip, and another one flip. And it was like a rattle in the end, all these hundreds of people. But it was very, very, very laid back, very friendly to the crew. I've got another picture on here, so if I can...
You have to do that one.
There we go. Oh, that's... there you go. So that's Mr. Graham there. Look at that, more hair. So that's me, less weight, more hair. Look at that tash, flipping it. Right, cool. So that's Chris Hill, he's my business partner at Wigwam. That's a truck driver. Now the truck driver liked working with the Graham organisation. He wasn't a Christian. He liked working with them because they all knew his name. So that guy there was the head of, Johnny Lennon was the head of audio for the Billy Graham organisation. But Mr. Graham knew people's names. He'd come up and, hi Mick, how are you? It's like, how does he know? So he was a very friendly man. That picture was in his hotel room after we'd just done a tour of Romanian churches and Hungarian churches. And we were stood in his hotel room, and he said, I'm going to pray now. I'm going to thank God for keeping you all safe, because it was a nightmare in Romania. You know, we trashed it. We had a brand new truck, a 7.5-ton truck, and it was trashed with the roads when it came back. And when we finished in Hungary, he said a prayer, and he said, I'm thanking God for keeping everybody safe. And he said, and if there's anybody in this room now who doesn't know the Lord Jesus Christ, you step forward. And I thought, what a man, you know. And there were 2 people in that room who didn't. And he didn't miss an opportunity. It was very, very ordinary, very normal. But all his people were like that. And it was from the top downwards. And to this day, I mean, we're working with Franklin Graham later this year. We're working with his grandson, Will Graham, in Falkirk in May. And there's just a great... there's just a great sense of family around them, and I don't know whether you saw the funeral service on Facebook and YouTube on Friday, and all his children came up to say something. They called him Daddy, and Ruth Graham came up, and she spoke about being divorced. She spoke about getting married a second time, and she knew the day after she got married it wasn't going to work. And I was so pleased that there was some real stuff said about people's lives at that funeral. Yeah. But what she did say, which was amazing, so she said she came home, not only she had embarrassed her family, she'd embarrassed Billy Graham. But she said, I came home, she said, I felt like the prodigal daughter. She said, and my dad came out, and Daddy hugged me and said, come in. And it was like nothing had gone wrong. So wonderful man, wonderful people, great to work for, fair employer, you know, want it done right, and they've taken us all over the place.
Really appreciate what you said, because it's so recent. And it's good to be able to talk in that way with such a special person.
Yeah.
You were also involved with the missions of the late David Watson. In fact, he was your first client.
He was.
You described him as a very ordinary man with an extraordinary vision.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about David Watson.
We used to do these events called The Whole Story. In fact, we did one in Liverpool in 1979.
The Empire.
In the Empire, yeah. And there was a bomb scare one night, and we were all across the road, and David Watson talked to the crowd for 5 minutes via the horn on the police car. So it was, you know, hello everybody, you know, it was a bit like that. And then we all went back in, and more people went in than came out. So,
I'd heard that, and now, you know.
It was true, they were stood up at the back. Yeah. And he, again, very, very gentle man, but he brought some new I don't know, he brought theatre into the meeting. He brought worship with
Like riding lights and things.
riding lights, yeah. He brought different styles of worship. So he was kind of bringing, I guess, a different take on church. And he was an evangelist, and there was an appeal. So I was working at the BBC 78, 79, and I jacked that in 1979. My dad said I was a nutter. How could anybody, leave a job at the BBC? It was a job for life then. So anyway, I left, and I was working with David Watson and Brotherhood of Man. So I was doing alternate weeks. I was doing weeks in clubs with Brotherhood of Man, who won the Eurovision Song Contest a million years ago, and then I was doing outreach with David Watson. But he was a lovely guy, but he kind of brought a bigger picture to church than just being a speaker. He was good.
Because you knew him, because you worked for him, you will remember David Watson became ill with cancer. Many people prayed for him to be made well, but unfortunately he died. When I asked you about any issues that you struggle with over faith, you said to me, no, faith is straightforward. It's people, church and religion that make it difficult. But don't you think that many people find faith in God difficult because in their terms they don't see answers to their prayers?
Through all the ups and downs in my life, it's been my faith that's kept me together. And some days it's been me and God. It's just like, I used to get up in the morning and fight the day. And I've said to some, I've been speaking at some places, and they said, what do you mean? It's not really a way to run a Christian life, is it, fighting the day? I said, yeah. I said, on Sunday I fight the day till lunchtime, then fight in the afternoon and fight the night. But it was my faith that kind of kept me going. And, I've just found it difficult with some church folk, with some religious people, in that my experience, it's been something I've believed, but it's something that I know has kind of kept my head together. There was a point in 1997, I wasn't brilliant, and I went to church in Littleborough with Bobby Ball and his wife, and they said, well, come to this church, nobody knows you, And at the end, they had this prayer time. Anyway, they dragged me out to the front and they prayed for me. And I felt the peace of God come on me like I've never felt before. It was an amazing experience. And it's just kept me going. So my poor experience of people and religion and church and one thing and another, it's actually been my faith that has actually kept my head together. So that has been my experience. I know everyone's experience is different of faith and church and life, but that has been my experience. It's that's kept my head together. I could write a book about how not to do life. I couldn't write one about how to do it, but I could write one about how not to do it. But by the grace of God and through faith, I'm here today doing this.
A couple of final questions. Why was getting 2 season tickets for Manchester United an incredible answer to prayer?
Okay, football, everybody. Here we go. Thought we'd never get here. When I was with the 3 kids, the older 2, Danny and Laura, they'd come to shows, so I'd leave them backstage with. Now Laura's got pictures with all sorts of artists and people that she'd been backstage with. It's like, can you just look after Laura for a bit? I'd go to work, and then Danny would do the same. But Andrew wouldn't. He wouldn't even come. He'd play football in the street on his own rather than come to a show with me. And it was like everything that was current at the time. It was Boyzone and he's 17 and all that kind of stuff. Not interested. So I said, well, what do you want to do? He said, I want to go to Old Trafford. Oh, I thought, flipping out. And getting tickets was like hen's teeth. I mean, it was before the stadium was extended. It was really hard. And so I'm phoning people up saying, do you know anyone who can get tickets off? And we kind of got an odd pair of tickets here and there. And it was really hard work because that's all he wanted to do. He played football at the weekend, so I went to watch him play. And I was in a restaurant in Stockport one night, and it was quite quiet. And we had some food, and then the waitress, who was an older lady, came up and she was talking, and she said to me, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" I said, "Oh, I'm a sound engineer, I do sound for shows." She said, "Oh, my son-in-law does that." I said, "Oh, does he?" I said, "Where does he work?" She said, "Oh, he works at a company called Wigwam in Haywood, you know it?" I said, "Yeah, I do actually." I said, "What's he called?" Then he was called Dale, and I said, "Oh, no, Dale." I said, "I work with Dale." "Oh, dear," she said. And then she went away and served a few other people, and then she came back, and then we got talking about football, and like you do in a restaurant, and she said, "My husband's got 2 tickets, season tickets for Manchester United, he doesn't use them." I said, "If he ever wants to get rid of them," I said, "I'll have them." And he phoned me the following day, and he said, "I've got these tickets, my job's changed." He said, "I can't go." He said, "Do you want them?" I said, "Yeah, how much?" He said, "You can have them." So it was halfway through the season, and then since then, every season I've renewed them, but it was just amazing. I mean, for me, it was just what I needed at that time to be able to, do something with my youngest son. So we got these United tickets, and I've still got them. They're in the Stretford, and other people use them, but that's how I got them. And for me, it was like just at your lowest. And I was, I don't believe God lets you drop any further than you can go, but I was fairly much down there. These tickets turned up, and I just thought, God's in everything, And for me, I mean, I'm sure if you're a Liverpool and Everton fan, you probably won't believe it, but these 2 tickets, and I've still got them. So it was quite amazing, just to help me keep my head together, to keep our family together, to do something together. So me and Andy have had a great time.
You have seen over your lifetime many people come to faith at large events, Billy Graham, David Watson events and what have you. Tell me about Yvonne, Bobby Ball's wife, coming to faith in Jesus.
During my kind of Brotherhood of Man period, I was working a lot of clubs, so I was picking up a lot of artists who wanted to work with us. But we picked up a lot of comedians. We picked up Little and Large, Cannonball, Jim Davidson, Freddie Starr, just lots and lots of acts that were in this club circuit. And Cannonball were massive in the 80s. I mean, we did 11 months with them, touring, summer season, pantomime. Some nights we'd do 2 shows, everything sold out. So they were absolutely huge in the 80s. And we were with them at the time. And later on in the 80s, we were doing pantomime at the Bradford Alhambra Theatre. And Bobby Ball and Tommy Cannon were hard work. Their school of thought was, we give 110%. As long as you give 100%, you're all right. So if you weren't giving 100%, you'd be sacked and down the road. I mean, it was like that. It was, but we all earned really good money. So we were kind of in doing this pantomime in the Alhambra, and the kind of pastor for the theatre came round and knocked on Bobby Ball's door and said, "Can I come in?" And he said, "Yeah, what do you want?" He said, "Well, I just want to say hello." He said, "Look, you've got nothing to share with me." He said, "I've got this Rolls Royce at the door. I've got more money than I know what to do with." He said, "And so I don't need whatever you're selling. Hop it." Anyway, next day Bobby Ball was shocked that this guy was fine, and he went and found this pastor, and basically became a Christian. So the next time I'm with them, Bobby Ball says to me, "I found Jesus." I said, "That's amazing." Tommy Cannon said, "I didn't know you were lost." So there was a bit of banter going on. It's like, no, okay. And at the time, we were just waiting to see what happened. So we're on this tour, and I'm looking after them on stage, and there was just 2 of us on this tour, and we had a 45-foot truck full of gear. And after the show, Bobby says to me, "Can you come and pray with my wife?" And I said, "I can, Bob, but kind of need to get all this stuff out and in that truck, and there's only one guy." And he said, "I can't believe you won't come now." He says, "You know, that's irresponsible." He said, "You need to pray for me." Oh, that flipping it. So I'll go to Ken, who I was working with. I said, "Ken," I said, "I know you've heard lots of excuses for not loading the truck, but you won't have heard this one before. Bob has asked me to go and pray with his wife." So he went, "Oh yeah, you know." So I go away, and we're in this dressing room, and so there's like a door like there, and kind of Bobby Ball's sat on this chair there, and his wife's sat there, and I'm kind of sat there. So we pray together, and I said to her, do you want to give your life to Jesus?" And she said, "Yeah, I do. I just want to change." Anyway, so we prayed, and she gave her life to Jesus. And then we stood up, and she was in floods of tears. I mean, she just couldn't stop crying. And Bob sat there, and she's hugging me like this. And then this door opened, and the tour manager looked in, shut the door quick, because he's then on stage saying, "Right, keep Bob away from his dressing room, because Mick Spratt's in there with his wife." Bob was sat behind the door. So there was kind of quite a lot of that went on that tour, not with me, but, and so that's kind of, that's the Von Ball story.
Mick, just one final thing. I know you've been doing an awful lot of stuff over many years. What currently are you involved with at the moment?
Commercially, we're just finishing X Factor tour. We just done 2 years with Coldplay, worldwide from Haywood. People say, "Where's Haywood?" You know, it's like worldwide from Haywood. So we've done every show they've ever done, and we just finished that. And then we're starting to plan the summer. We'll do the military tattoo up in Edinburgh. And then I'm working on an event with Will Graham in Falkirk. We're working on an event with Cannon and Ball. We're doing a tour called The Dressing Room. And so that's a kind of a play stroke variety show. So we're really busy. And I'm doing Mark Mitchell's carol service in Chester at Christmas. It's all right, Mark.
Okay. I think I get to know about that. Mick, it's been great to talk to you. It's lovely to sit and talk to somebody who's been through many of the normal issues of today, held on to his faith, been an inspiration to others, and has come here tonight to share what you've shared with everybody here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mick Spratt.
Thank you.